So
Okay.
it says we're live. I'm going to wait.
That sounds fine.
Okay, welcome to 2 Month Review, the weekly podcast from Open Letter and 3%, in which we take one giant book, break it down bit by bit, section by section, talk about it, analyze it, have fun, make jokes, do whatever. This season, we are going over Kjersti Skomsvold's MONSTERHUMAN, and I'm joined today by Patrick Smith. How are you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing pretty okay. I mean, we both have allergy. We're both allergy suffering at the moment. So if there's sniffling,
nerds.
that's why. Otherwise, yeah. I'm pretty good.
Good. It was I went to a Kevin Morby show last week, and my allergies were just awful, and I was driving people away from me and my friend. Like the crowd slowly just move away as I'm just sneezing constantly. I'm like, I'm not getting anyone sick. It's just allergies.
It's just disgusting. It's just
disgusting.
I'm just disgusting.
I'm just a leaky human being right now.
Oh my God. That sounds horrible. So aside from that, have you been reading along with MONSTERHUMAN and with the podcast?
I've read all the way up until what we're going through today.
But and then you didn't read that, so I'll just carry the whole load, which would be fun.
No, I've been inconsistent about like falling behind and then catching back up, falling behind, catching up.
Yeah.
So last night and to this morning have been my catch up period.
Nice.
Including on the podcast. I listened to all the episodes until now.
Very cool. So what do you think so far?
I really like it. It's funny as hell, and it's a hard humor sometimes to explain to people because there are straight up jokes, but a lot of the things are just funny without it being particularly a joke.
Yeah.
Especially her response, just like to her conversations with people. Oftentimes, like what she says isn't funny to them, and she probably doesn't mean it to be funny in the moment, but once it's put into the book the way it is, it's hysterical.
Yeah.
So that's been a fun thing to watch happen. And in general, it's a really engaging read. One of those books that's very easy to read and go with, but also is very smart.
Yeah. I completely agree. Did you read her first book?
Yeah, I read that. I don't know how long ago now. And I remember it was fine. I think you didn't love it. I remember talking with you about it when I bought it or picked it up. I don't remember. I remember talking about it with you years ago.
Yeah.
And it's funny. You oftentimes I feel like the reasons you don't like a book and maybe strongly don't like it, I often agree with the reasons, but I'm like, it's still fine.
Yeah.
I think both of us use the fine category for books the same way and in a large degree.
Yeah.
Most books are just fine, and I read a lot of fine books, and I'm happy reading a lot of fine books. This is much better. This goes above fine.
I agree with that. To dwell on that fine thing for a second, like because of how numbers work, if you read enough books, like the majority will be in the middle, and like within like a standard deviation above or below the middle, and like most books will have to fall into that category. Like 2/3 of them will fall into that category. So it takes something special to be more than just like fine or like acceptably good. I reread it this weekend.
Oh, nice. What do you think?
I had a similar reaction to the first time, I think, where like I do think it's good and I appreciate it more now than I probably did then. Like I think I read it when it was like when a lot of the stuff related to having worked at Dalkey that published it was still fresh. And so there's a little bit more background that made it like less something that I didn't want to like. But I reread it with like that all out of the way and no problems with that. And I do enjoy it. But it's like it's not as I don't think it's as good as Monster. I think MONSTERHUMAN's better. But what was weird was how similar in tone they are. Like I didn't remember that. Like even thinking back on it as we've been talking about the podcast, in my mind, this Faster I Walk, the Smaller I Am, the novel that she's writing throughout MONSTERHUMAN that gets published in the last section that we went through and that we'll go into more today. It's in my mind, it was like much more sparse and direct and like a little bit less a different tone or a different voice, but it's almost the same voice. Like it really is very similar. So like, let me see if I can even Here's the first paragraph. I like it when I can be done with something, like a knitted earwormer, like winter, spring, summer, fall, even like Epsilon's career. I like to get things over with, but impatience has consequences. The time when Epsilon gave me an orchid for my birthday, I didn't really want an orchid. I never got the point of flowers. They're just going to wither and die. What I actually wanted was for Epsilon to retire. Like there's that sort of like cadence and like sort of a near jokey tone that she has, where it's like I want to say like jaunty in a way, where it bounces from one thing to another.
Jaunty.
And that's the same. And I was like shocked by that because in my mind it was very different. But there's one thing that was really stood out. If I can find it here, is that the character who has cystic fibrosis in this book, what's her name? Elisiv? I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, I don't.
You know what I'm talking about, though. You know the person I'm speaking of. And she's in this part. That name is used in this book too.
Huh.
And it's a character that's in a wheelchair. Like it's almost
that's surprising.
Yeah.
No,
There's
this whole thing is surprising. Because I also remembered it differently.
Yeah. The humor's identical. It's wild.
Funny. I want to reread it now. I don't know if I am missing part of my library, and I in the S's area. So like M through S are just not currently with me, and so that's probably in there. So I can't reread it. I didn't even look though. I should have looked.
Yeah, I don't know where my copy is either. I went and got it from the library. It seemed easier than going and digging through books in the basement. But no, it's really interesting that it is so similar in tone, and I get why this book was very popular and won the awards and everything, because it is well done. It is very much about a woman who's wants to do something, but doesn't know what that is. She's constantly talking about her husband who's gone. In a way that you're not certain that he's gone or what time it is. But it's very, it is better than I remember. There's still parts of it relies on this idea that she loves things to rhyme. And this is what bugged me the first time is that the rhymes don't quite work in English the same way. Or if they do, they seem like a strain, or it'll be a long sentence. So it'd be oh, I don't want to lie to people, but there's going to come a time where I'm going to lie down and I'm going to die. That rhymes. And you're oh God, come on. That's not it feels I feel in other ways it would be so adjacent and witty. And then for some reason, when it comes out in the English, it feels a bit more strained, but I get it. And it's only in there 8 times. So it's not a big deal, but it is very good. It's very interesting. It's very much like a character portrait. So as a compliment to Monster Human, it's pretty interesting to read because it is so small. It's 140 very small pages. For anyone watching on YouTube, you can see that the size of the book is much, much smaller than Monster Human. But it's captures a woman's consciousness very, very clearly. And Monster Human, I think, does that too, and does that in that sprawling fun way that's very filled with contradictions that I really like.
Yeah, I think that the contradictions part is one of the things that really makes Monster Human work. And I think it's also, again, my memory of Faster I Walk is that it was kind of striving for sincerity, really wanting you to feel how sincere that she's being. Whereas in Monster Human, that work doesn't feel as present. You actually feel it is more sincere because the work isn't quite as present as the way I felt it in The Faster I Walk.
Yeah, I remember having a hard time when I read Faster I Walk too, of being this woman's 30 years old and she's trying to imagine someone at the end of their lives, everything's gone and they want to die and they're trying to accomplish something, and it felt a little bit a guess. But given that she spent now knowing through Monster Human that she spent that time, it changed that dramatically for me. It didn't feel quite so trying to be a Brooklynite envisioning what an old person is but actually okay, I respect this much more now. Which is, you got to read things a couple times sometimes.
That's true, especially if they're actually good.
Yeah, very true. So today we're supposed to go over pages 316 through 360, which is the middle section of East of the River. Is it East of the River? Right. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, I believe so.
And yeah, East of the River. And it's a section in which like the main thing is that her book has come out. The first part that we went through last week, her book had come out and she got like a lot of attention for it. She did all these interviews, and now it's like kind of finishing that up, and it's over. And I think that that's interesting too. Like this book, like there's moments where like you can be like, oh man, why, like she's so self-involved about like the interviews and all this stuff, and then it like acknowledges that in the next section and moves on. It makes it so interesting. And like it is the reason I really like this book is because it is so multifaceted and not trying to be one particular presentation of a human being or of a person, but like that she contains all these different concepts of herself and different ways in which she's interacting with the world. I really love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the constant. She admits it. She's trying to find out who she wants to be, who other people see her as, who she is, and those are all three very similar things that also shift and change as life goes on. And then especially now, she's been working on this book in this book for a while now, but this is when it really seems to kick off that she's thinking about this Monster Human book.
Yeah.
And then there's the actual writing of it is, again, a version of yourself. You know, how are you presenting yourself in this literary way versus how are you uncovering yourself in your actually day-to-day life?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to start there actually with a quote on 355. So this is jumping ahead towards the end of this part,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really make any difference. But when she's talking about how this guy whose name is I'm going to mispronounce it, but Thuray Eric Sunde, not sure. Sunde, who knows? Is talking, and she says it's somewhat unpleasant when he talks about himself. He says that he is so weird. I'm so weird, says Sunde, smiling, and I realize why Hilda always had such a twisted expression on her face when I describe myself. I should stop doing that. In any case, one thing is certain. After 2 years of writing school, with an endless parade of visiting authors, I've noticed there's a difference between men and women when they talk about themselves in their own writing. One must take big words for what they are, as incompetence not to be heeded. Bragging and self-importance is the poetry of man, and he uses it all his life to gain attention and comfort. Then she goes on. This summarizes, I'll read the whole thing. And then they speak so beautifully about the great book that contains everything. And of course, this is the book that I'm writing now. She was 30 years old when she took on the task. This summarizes my contradictory self-confidence, the belief, the certainty that I can do it, come what may. At the same time, this doubt, this feeling of never being good enough. But now I just describe myself as precisely what I'm not supposed to do. It makes things so unpleasant for others. Which is like, just essentially like this entire book is her describing herself.
Yes.
making it unpleasant for others in a way.
And a lot of times it seems that when she's alone is when she doubts herself, and when someone points out the reasons to doubt herself is when she gets confident again.
Yeah.
Like there's a she's not outright confrontational pretty much ever, although there are scenes with Hilde where she confronts what their relationship is.
Yeah.
But she's often subtly confrontational, and that's when she's like building herself. Like I'm skipping back to a line that I think I was contemplating using as a favorite line.
That's okay.
Where is the hell is it though? It's when someone says they don't really read novels anymore.
Oh,
and right. Oh, you only read poetry then?
Yeah.
And that's another one of those lines that you're like, when she said that, in that context, is she making fun of the person?
Yeah.
Or is she actually being sincere, like not grasping that this person is saying they don't really read at all anymore? It's this, and it's nice because in the context, in the book, it becomes a poke at the person, becomes a mocking of this person who is an author who's not reading, which I think most people associate authors with doing.
Yeah.
And it's fun the way she's constantly kind of poking at people, but not really. And it's how she kind of builds herself up from her moments of lacking confidence.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it doesn't feel like antagonistic. It's like an awkward sort of poking, like like not quite getting the world at full. Man, there's some creepy shit in this chapter. I forgot about 326 has the Dag Solstad quote. He says, "I look good from behind. That must be the nicest compliment I've ever received." Dag Solstad is like a quintessentially like old male Norwegian author that like people love.
Yep.
This is exactly what I suspect he is.
But to go on with how she complicates things, there's the line where I can't find anything.
Yeah.
She is, annoyed that someone. Oh God, she's annoyed that no, I hate knowing on like where on a page a line is, but never being able to find it.
No
But
worries.
she admits that like she likes someone's attention, but also hates it. Which
Oh, right.
is, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you have
I
any idea
do
where it
know what you're
is?
talking about, but I do not know where it is.
Yeah, but there is the constant contradiction, which is a pleasant tension in the book.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, right here. Let me know if you ever need a house, he says. That's a pickup line, but I don't realize it until it's too late. I don't think that I have a chance with such beautiful people, is the one
Well,
that I was thinking of.
that's not
That's
even the
not the
one I
one
was
you're
thinking
thinking of.
of, but that's another one. Like there's it's someone who if she says it, basically she admits if she stands up to someone, he might not call her pretty anymore, and she likes being told she's pretty.
Oh, right. Yeah. God, I don't
And
know. I have no idea where that is, but I know exactly
yeah,
what you're talking about.
and that it's this constant honesty in this book. Like it's a difficult honesty throughout this book, both about herself and about others, and that means that she can contradict herself because honesty often is going to involve a lot of contradictions.
There's a good dirty joke too.
Where's
On 328, a woman introduces the next speaker, gushes about the sentences in his book. She says that she wants to suck on his syntax. I can't stop
yes,
myself from laughing. And when the next speaker goes up to the microphone and says that she can suck on his syntax as much as she would like, I almost fall out of my chair. Like,
yes,
dude,
yes. It's so.
I'm gonna try that.
You're gonna try that?
No,
Please don't
I'm
try
not.
that.
I'm just kidding. That would be horrible.
That would be very horrible.
Yeah, but there's like a lot of like that creepy stuff that's in here. There's also John's back as a character.
Yep.
He's not as creepy, but there is a weirdness that comes up in that where he comes to for they alluded to it. She alluded to it in the first part of this chapter, I believe, where she invited him to Christmas or to Christmas
Mm-hmm.
with their family, and so it's that time now. So like this is moving in like a very mappable period of time at this moment. I don't know that it does that quite as easily in the earlier sections, but this one,
No, the earlier sections felt like they jumped a lot, especially the last section was like all over the place, like paragraph by paragraph. They really felt they could be anywhere.
yeah, and I agree. And this part like is moving forward in like a obvious sort of way. Like they're through the fall
Right.
and into the winter. So like her book comes out in the fall because I don't know if Norway is the same as Iceland, but in Iceland everything comes out in October.
Yeah.
And I feel like in Norway and a lot of Scandinavian countries, there's like that big fall rush. I mean, there is sort of here too. Like the big books will come out in September, October, of like the Stephen King sort of like
Right.
those sort of books, right? But I feel like in the Scandinavian countries, it's just common to like have something available for the Christmas season. And so the books come out. It's gone through like its whole debutante process. We haven't gotten any information on how many dice she got, which is unfortunate. I've been trying. I've been waiting for that. I want more dice. But now that's passed, and like she's sort of surprised, like that's over, and references it. So it's into the winter. John shows up, and they have like these exchanges where like she's like, I just don't say anything. I have nothing to say. I don't talk. I just say yes or no, and then he like finally like breaks through to her and starts asking her all the questions. Like laughter spills from John's mouth, followed by a flurry of questions. He just flat out asks about everything. Maybe because he's an American. After he had said like, "Will I get to know you at all on this trip?" says John. So it's like it's got this like weird vibe to it, but like they do have like that interaction, and then we also get this great bit on 336. I got an email from John in which he said that the reader's report concluded that my book should be translated. So they're going to publish The Faster I Walk, the Smaller I Am after that reader's report. That reader's report was most likely, assuming that it was real, written by the translator, Carrie Pierce, who's a friend of Open Letter and myself.
Right.
So good fun.
I think John comes off like kind of well. Like it's definitely awkward but I think most of her interactions with everyone in the book are awkward.
Yes.
Like I think no one, I don't, yeah, like almost no one in the book comes off that well, which is probably just realistic to life. I think most
Yeah.
people are kind of messy, but like her honesty about her own messiness can interact with other people's messiness really well.
Yeah. I agree. And
And then John's also just him being less creepy than other men in the book. Just that alone makes him seem decent.
yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And like he even like there's a lot of references to like how she reads like Jean Reese because he recommends that she read him or she read her because she's written about cerebral women and I think that I'm maybe like that. Like
Yeah,
like he's not a bad character in here at all. It's just it's funny
right.
to see and to know
It's
like
really funny.
yeah, to like know a person that shows up in this book as a character and to see someone else's like mind work through them as a human and as a character in a book is really unique. I don't know that I've had that experience before.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had that experience because I don't know John. Um,
Yeah, I'm trying to think
but it
like
would
even like
be,
with memoirs or anything like that. Like I don't think I know enough people that are like famous enough that have written memoirs or like writerly enough that they've written like these kind of things. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of funny. Like every time he shows up, I'm like,
yeah,
oh, this is real. Like it makes the
yeah,
book seem more real.
yeah.
No way.
I'm gonna side tangent for a minute. I went to Montreal this week, whatever, I don't know. For a release of the English translation of The Dishwasher, which is a
Oh,
big hit
nice.
in Quebec, and a lot of that book is based on his life, and that that stuff it doesn't interest me to read that book autobiographically. It is
Okay.
way more interesting ways to read it, but I know that it is pretty true to life. And there's a cook in it who is just this insane figure in the book. Dangerous, fun, protective, but also just a menace. I don't know. He's wild. He's just like a larger than life chef character. And the book is also dedicated to a human by that name. And
Oh.
so I go to the reading, and the original Montreal publisher is there also, and he just leans over me at one point and goes, that's the bear, and I turn around, and there's this huge, jolly looking dude, who I'm like, yep, that is exactly what I pictured when I was reading this book. That is exactly what the guy should look like, and that was fun. It was that, and that I guess that's the closest I've come, but that was like kind of the inverse of reading a ton and then meeting the figure that inspired it.
Right. I'm
It
very
was cool.
I've heard a lot of good things about the dishwasher. Not to go
It's
off on another
super
tangent,
fun. I
but
know. It is it's like one of those books that's about as smart as a simple book could be. It's a book that someone who reads two books a year and needs it all about plot and character can really enjoy and really get into, but also someone who is going to read a little bit deeper or stronger will
yeah.
also still really appreciate. So I think it's a book I'm recommending a lot for that exact reason. Like I think just the range of people who can appreciate it is wide.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems very cool. Seems
It's
very
fun as
cool.
hell.
I just need to,
Um,
I have the galley right here that anyone watching on YouTube can see. Um, but I think I have the finished copy at home.
I
Who
would go with
knows?
the finished copy. There's the it depends which galley you have. Oh, you have the galley. Yeah, go with the finished copy. There is
Yeah.
a lot of editing in the end, a lot of it. So
I figure it's great because it's from Biblioasis too, which not to digress and segue, but anyone who's listening at this point should go out and buy a copy of Duck's Newberry Report, which will be the 10th season of the 2 month review. We're gonna get started pretty early in October, like right away, because this book is gonna take forever, and I want to finish it by the end of the year.
yeah,
And it's giant.
it's huge.
And
I'm excited.
yeah, me too. And I had the galley of this and was going to read it when Dan Wells from Biblioasis was like, "Well, we added 300 pages," and I was like,
Yeah,
"What? Like, we
it's
did
insane.
how?"
This whole thing of adding pages to like existing works is fun.
And
Everything's just getting longer and longer.
but apparently, like, it's the same in the UK edition. So it wasn't like it's only in this version.
Ah,
The
okay.
UK one and this one are the same, but she added a ton of stuff in between the galley and the publication of the book for the first time. So it makes sense, but it is like it was like, oh yeah, I'm not reading that galley then. That galley is worthless to me. You know?
Yeah.
Like sort of like your experience reading the dreamed part.
Yes, God, that keeps up. Whatever. We'll talk about that when that time comes. I finally found that stupid line I was looking for.
Oh,
It's on. It's continuing the section you were reading on 255. If Knausgaard is mass culture, does it mean he's a woman? Carrie says that Gear is a lady. Old Robert Sunde is a man, for good and bad. Truth is like a woman, says Sunde, and the woman is like Africa. This last bit is so bogus exotic, but I don't say that to Sunde. I'm scared that I ask him how he could say something so idiotic he will stop telling me how pretty I am. And I like that a lot.
yep. Yeah, there you go.
And that's also like what the I think the book allows her to say these things that otherwise she wouldn't say or
Yeah.
couldn't say, because I think there's these two levels where first there's how women should talk, I'm should here being in heavy quotation marks, should talk and present herself, especially as a public figure, and then there's what the actual privacy of writing and reconstructing allows her to do. But even then it's risky. Even then it's could be responded to in a negative way or just ignored, as I think for various reasons this book has been ignored until there's whatever 10 of us are reading it for the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. There is sorry, now I'm dying from my allergies. There's a part that relates to that's specifically about male and female authors on 357 too. Maybe male authors have identified the pen with their male genitals, while earlier female authors were forced to conceal their rage, and perhaps they were also, quote, afraid of the pen, unquote. But it's still possible to find that suppressed rage, because there are these monster women who double the text's angelic heroines as an expression of feminine undertaking, as a wish to be a plotter, the one who pushes the story forward. And Eliseve reads a new text that she's written, and I have to lie down on the ground. I had no idea how angry she is. Yeah. It feels like I cannot stand upright and think about this text. Every time I think about it in the next days, I can feel the wooden floor beneath me. Eliseve has furiously identified the pen with her sick female sexual organs, and I have become one of those monster women who double the text's angelic heroines and push the story forward.
Yeah, I love that bit.
I do too. This part is tragic too, because this section is where Eliseve, who's already been is sick, finds out that she has cancer, and their friend dies of like a brain tumor. And it has that whole bit where it's like, his brain tumor is only the size of a plum, and my cancer is the size of a mandarin orange. And
a constant comparing of cancer to food.
Yeah. Which is very weird, but apparently it's also like everything gets compared to like weird things that we all supposedly know the size of, and yet like the size of these things are not very uniform, especially in an age in which we genetically modify everything. Like this is the case when the baby was being born. It'd be like, this week your baby's the size of like an eggplant, and like the next thing would be like, this week your baby's the size of a melon. You're like, what the fuck is that mean?
What kind of melon? There's so many different melons.
I tried to get I really wanted there to be like a poster that had all of those lined up by week as like the sizes, and it would just be like all like fucked up, and like that would be perfect for like people who are pregnant. Just be like, oh, it's like week 14. My kid's the size of like a corn cob. Like, just to like put it in stark relief, because it's like, it is insane. But yeah, that part's super sad, because it referenced that he was going to die in the last section that we read, where it said like, this is the last time that I'm ever going to like be around him or talk to him. And then now that he passes away is like really intense, and she calls everyone or has to tell everyone. And then her friend who has cystic fibrosis is like, well, also I have cancer, and she's like, that is super not fair. Like, you have too much. You already have enough problems. You don't need that. It's a sad section.
The line that so she talks about someone who was I once read about a soldier lying in hospital without a face, without being able to move. They thought he was brain dead. They kept him alive as a kind of experiment. But a nurse began to take interest in him, and in a year they were able to figure out a language. Maybe it was by using his breathing. The first sentence that he was able to say to her was, "Kill me." The briefest definition I know of about what it means to be human: the right to long for an end, which is so scary and so hard, but also true. And it feels like she's really confronting death constantly in this book, more than I remember The Faster I Walk being, even though that book is supposedly about death. Um, it just feels, again, stronger and more sincere and more intense in this book than in Stronger I Walk. Like, death is all over the place because her friends are dying. She's she's been ill, and that could lead to death or just make you want to die.
Okay, so so Johnny Got His Gun is the movie, right? The film or the book that that is the story of.
I don't
So,
know.
so the only reason I know this, so there's the film, yeah, Johnny Got His Gun. Um, it was a cult film, blah blah blah, about a young American soldier hit by an artillery shell during World War I, lies in a hospital bed. He's a quadruple amputee. He's lost his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. He remains conscious and able to reason, but his wounds render him a prisoner in his own body. As he drifts between reality and fantasy, he remembers his old life. He eventually tries to communicate via Morse code, tapping his head saying "help." He wishes they would, the army would put him in a glass coffin, blah, blah, blah. He responds begging to be euthanized, repeatedly saying, "kill me." So the reason I know that this is a thing is because of the fucking Metallica video from my youth, which was released. So it was, one was a song from And Justice for All in 1988. And the video of this is it's shot in like black and white, and it's a person in a bed. The song is like in my mind at this moment. Like I remember this was very popular. It was like maybe the first Metallica song I ever heard. I don't even know like where it is in their like discography or any of that because I'm not a Metallica fan. But it was like a super popular video, and the whole thing was that this guy that was like an amputee and in this bed starts saying like "kill me" and like how it would be better to die. It's from And Justice for All was the fourth studio album by Metallica, released on August 25th, 1988. So yeah.
God.
So yeah, that's where I remember this. I knew this the second I hit that. I was like, oh, I remember this video clear as day. Like it's a nightmare.
So okay, so that she's not referencing that video.
I doubt it.
Specifically, but the way she uses references in this book is odd. So on page 243, she says, "My first book was written from my background in science. I didn't know very much about literature. While with my second book, I want to stretch out towards literary influences. I want to imitate the great writers, to steal their sentences and act like they were my own." Have you noticed that in this book or no?
Oh, interesting.
Because there is a line way earlier that is a complete paraphrasing, reworking of a Kafka line without any acknowledgement whatsoever. And
yeah,
I'm curious if that was just one specific one, or if there are more of those than I've noticed. Because I noticed that line. I was like, oh, that's kind of weird and cool that she completely threw this line in there. Doesn't mention Kafka. It's not. It's a reference, but it's only a reference if you know the referent. Whereas a lot of times, with Faison, he's constantly referencing, and most of them are straight acknowledged, like straight. He's talking about Pink Floyd. He's talking about whatever. He's talking about his reference.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, I don't. Now I'm wondering like how many lines are there in this book that are like that? Because I'm not smart enough to catch many of them. Like there could be tons that I miss because I'm a moron. But I caught the Kafka one, and have you noticed anything like that or no?
I haven't been paying that close attention, but that part also continues on where it says, "Allow a few proverbs from the Bible to seep in as well." There's always some that could fit. So like I suspect that there are things that are in here.
Yeah.
Like the references that I've been paying attention to are every time she names someone, and that every single one of those people I sort of more or less know of. Even like Mircea Cartarescu. Although Europe Has the Shape of My Brain, I have no idea what book that is.
No concept. I only know his that one.
Blinding.
Yeah.
And Nostalgia is the other one that was translated for New Directions. Yeah, I don't know if this is that under a different title or what it is, but yeah, those ones are obvious and are in there, but I don't know about the lines themselves. But I bet you they are. I mean, I don't doubt it, like in any way. Like I suspect that there are things that are like intentionally like put in as references to those famous authors. And like,
Yeah.
but I like the part to go off a riff of what you said about how she wrote her first book, is that it's like a few pages later on 357. I don't agree with Thomas Espedal that one writes their first book because they want to be an author. I wrote my first book because I had to become human.
Yeah.
And I feel like that showed up earlier, something to that effect. I think it's when John actually asked her earlier, like, why did you write your book? And she's like, I don't know. Or what were you trying to do? And she's like, thinks about it for a while, and she's like, try to become human. Let's see if I can find that. So it's been referenced before, but I think it's interesting that it's comes back, but also is set up as like the male author says, like, you write your first book to become an author, and she's like, I wrote it to become human, is like a different perspective. And this isn't within the section that's talking about like male and female differences between male and female writers and their respect, the way that they refer to their work and how they treat it. Here it is. Oh, you know what? It doesn't answer here. So I think I'll find it. But on 312 earlier is, what did you want your novel to do? John asked now in a new email. He's thinking about whether to translate my book and distribute it in the USA. It takes me an eternity to write a single sentence. It feels like I'm giving this foreign man my heart. I wanted the novel to make me a human, I write, before I push the send button. And again, it reminds me of what the book means to me. Regardless of whether it sells or is translated or anything at all, regardless of whether anything happens, it has meant everything. I have a question for you that I should know the answer to and should have researched, but it's not easily referenced anywhere here. But last week when I was posting the podcast post for this, I did a quick search for the faster I walk, the smaller I am, to get like an image, because we have to put, if you don't go to the website, if you don't go to the 3% website, you'll never see this. If you don't see it on the first day, if you go through a link, you'll never see it. But if you go to our front page, the three most recent posts have a giant picture that goes along with them at the top. So I always have to find like some giant ass picture that somewhat goes along with these posts. And it's never that easy. I usually just find like landscapes of Norway or like whatever. Because I don't think anyone's paying attention and people like pretty things. But I typed in the faster I walk, the smaller I am in hopes I could find the Norwegian cover and use like a snippet of that as like the big picture for the post. And instead what I found were a series of what seemed to be film stills. Was this made into a movie?
I have no idea. It wouldn't surprise me. I feel like it was a easy story to convert into a film. And also I think smaller countries that have their own booming culture scenes often do, make film or TV adaptations of their small works. I'm only saying that because I know that like Quebec does that a decent amount. So I wouldn't be surprised if Norway is the same way, that they just promote their own culture pretty well, and that involves making their own movies that America doesn't end up caring about.
Yeah. I can't, like, a quick search doesn't turn up anything because like it's not the right title, obviously. Like I have to put in whatever. But yeah, I was curious because it looked like it fit everything. It was like a picture of this elderly woman like in like a woods alone, looking a little bit confused, and like I assume that so maybe it was. But I was kind of hoping that would show up in this book in Monster Human this week, that it'd be like, oh yeah, and then like I sold the film rights.
Well, there's still time. There's still time. 100 pages left. Yeah, almost 100 pages left.
This book is big.
It's big.
It's really big. So I have a question, because you mentioned this, like, or we had a Twitter conversation a bit with someone who was like, didn't like this because it was sprawling and like, whatever, blah, blah. And like, I think both of us had the same reaction, that like, usually when a female writer writes something like this, it gets dismissed as being too big and too like unwieldy and not whatever. And like, and then reading it, I'm like, no, it is like, if a male wrote this, it would have a different reception. And I think it's great the way that it is so sprawling and like freewheeling and doing all that kind of stuff. Has your opinion changed, or is it the same as that? I think we both went into that after that conversation, went into this book with like a similar sort of prejudice that we would probably appreciate it more.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Okay. I like big, sprawling, messy works generally. I think they're fun. I think this one's particularly fun. I think this one, not so much this section, but the previous section, although it is in this section, in the previous section, you talked about it briefly on one of the podcasts that you're glad that she doesn't exist in the Twitter generation in the Twitter world,
Yeah.
because that last section there were whole paragraph, 2 paragraphs blocks that if she was a Twitter person would be just a tweet and
Yeah.
that's it. They wouldn't have the depth of the intelligence that they developed by being in this big ass book. And it's still here. All these little moments that I could see because they're personal, because they're about her life. I could see someone just tweeting them away into the ether, and then they become nothing instead of becoming part of this work. And so that's something I like, is seeing sort of the chaotic messiness of a person put into a whole complete work rather than sent off for a couple likes.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that whole thing is if a man wrote a work like this, and it got let's say it gets attention, it would be highly praised for a bit, and then there'd be the backlash, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the backlash would be accurate. Knausgaard, like there's backlash, and the backlash is accurate, but so is a lot of the praise. Like those things, returning to contradictions, both those things can be true. There are
Yeah.
big, long, messy works that are not perfect, and there's reasons to criticize them. There's reasons to praise them. And so if this was that, it would be the same thing. It would eventually get criticism, and have people just dismissing it completely instead of working through the complications. But to me, the frustrating part, and the reason I was excited to read this book and am enjoying it thoroughly, is that I think the answer to that, the answer to the over-the-top praise that a big work by a male would get, the answer to that isn't tearing down that work; it's building up other works.
Yeah.
And so I think it's frustrating to me that a lot of the people who would do something like criticize Knausgaard heavily, or criticize the male version of this book heavily, wouldn't then pick up something like this. All they want to do is tear down the male work and not put the work into actually building something up. And so I don't know. I mean, that's the reason I'm excited about this. It's the reason I read women like this. I think that is the better answer to the easy praise that men get,
Yeah.
is to praise someone worthy of the praise rather than just spending your energy trying to be popular by tearing down someone else.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to tear people down.
It's so easy, and it's more rewarding immediately, especially on Twitter. Um,
I hate Twitter so much. The post, it will have been up by the time this podcast goes up, but the post today is that's going up today is specifically anti-Twitter.
yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know.
Fucking over it.
I'm dreadfully addicted to it, and I hate myself for it all of the time.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
whatever,
it's easy to make fun of Twitter too, but it needs to be done.
It needs to be done.
It's a horrible thing.
But it's like, how else do you try to get any attention for a book like this, or the Marie Claire Blais? Are you still reading them or no?
No, I keep trying to
Okay.
get to the second one, and I keep running out of time because
Yeah.
I make too many obligations for myself, and that's a
Yeah.
fun thing, and the obligations start to take up too much time.
Same. I've made it through the second. I have
Oh,
the
cool.
third and the fourth, and I haven't started them yet. But
I
will.
was in Norway with someone from House of Anansi who I believe they said that they are continuing to translate them. So the ones that have been translated will be coming out.
Another one is coming out. They've changed the translator.
Oh,
But another one is coming out. I'm excited.
so
about
for
it.
anyone listening who's not aware of this, so Marie Claire Blais is a very famous Quebecois author who's written. Her first book came out in the 60s, I believe, the early 60s.
Something like that. She's been around forever.
She's been around for quite a time, and has written some 36 novels, and some of them have been award-winning, very popular. A number of them have been translated. I don't know that she ever got any attention here in the States.
Even though she lives in America.
Yeah, she lives in Key West, I believe.
Yeah,
and she had a very a love affair with a very influential person as well. But I can't remember the details of that. But it makes sense that she should have become more popular than she is. And her last works that she's been writing over the past, I guess 15, 20 years, is a series of books that involve I don't even know how many 100 characters but are like all stream of consciousness going in and out of different characters at different settings. And they sort of build off of one another and build out this world that's like our world at around the year 2000. And they are very like Virginia Woolf heavy influenced, and they're very big, they're very sprawling, and they're the sort of thing that this project is like, as it's on the level of the Knausgaard project in terms of its size and in terms of its like space, although it's very, very different. It's
I would say the space is larger because it's, I mean, she's all over the place in what aspects of North American culture she's writing about and the perspectives that she's writing about, whereas, you know, Knausgaard was obviously, you know, famously about his navel.
And they're both very ambitious though.
Yes,
in different ways. They're both equally ambitious. And like, I don't know anyone who's read these books except for like a handful of like you and Caitlin Baker and like a few people, but they're really, the first one anyways is really interesting. It's really, it takes time, it takes commitment, but it should be discussed. And I feel like I feel like she really is getting dismissed because she's a female that writes in French and in Quebecois French.
Yeah, but these
and no other reason.
Writing about things that people act like they care. I mean, she's writing. The second book has content about police violence against Black people, and she wrote that in like 90 something.
Yeah,
and she's this white woman from Quebec, but no one gives a shit because again, it's easier to just complain.
It's easier to complain. It's easier to find the thing to complain about than it is to appreciate the thing that exists.
It's easier to say that only men write big, long, huge, ambitious projects and that they're doing it out of ego. And it's easier to say that than it is to read big, long, ambitious projects by women.
I think what you mean is that they do it because their dicks are small.
Yes, they do it because their dicks are small.
Yeah, that's going to be the case with this Ducks Newburyport. It'll be interesting to see, like, I'm fascinated by, like, how it's going to get received. Like, the Booker Prize, being a finalist for the Booker Prize is so huge and has been so good for Biblioasis and for everyone. And it led to like a daily New York Times review, which is a rarity for like experimental book of this sort. I mean, it is not in translation. If this were translated, there's not a chance that would happen, no matter what.
No
matter what. Like, it would have to win the Man Booker, and like the author would have to be something else. Something else would have to happen for it to be able to get to that level. I mean, Flights comes close to the Olga Tokarczuk, but it's partially because of her. So the book won the Man Booker, but then she's also like so outspoken. The Book of Jacob was like condemned by Polish people for being like pro-Jewish and anti-nationalist, and like Poland's just a fucking mess politically. And so there's like enough other things that make it get that kind of attention. But if Ducks Newburyport were translated at this point in time, would not be getting that. It would not be getting those reviews. So it'll be interesting to see, like, as it goes along, there's going to be like the yes, let's get on board. It's an angry woman's rant. Let's do this. And then I'm sure there's going to be people who are like, no, it's just like long and shitty and doesn't need to be so long. And it'll have that backlash at some point in time.
No, but you can't have that backlash.
You don't think so?
No, because that backlash is sexist.
That's fair. But I wonder what will happen. I think it's gonna be great. I can't wait to get started on it, to be honest.
I'm excited.
Like, I'm loving Monsterhuman, but I am looking ahead to like, oh man, when we get into this Ducks thing, like, you just flip open pages and it's like wild and looks like it's got like a lot of good rant. I feel like it's gonna be a very fun and funny book to read and talk about.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's returning to Monsterhuman.
Yep.
So Hilde seems to be slipping away, at least in this section. What do you make of the Hilde? So I know you and Brian have tried to figure out who it is, and I'm assuming that it isn't a composite, that it is actually a woman. There probably is like a Hilde author who we just don't know, and that's who it is. And so, what do you make of their relationship overall? And is it over in your mind, or is it just this lapse period, and does Hilde have to come back?
I don't know if she has to come back, but my feeling is I agree with you that I think I'm more and more convinced that there is a person that this is based on, and that person is written about Kjersti
Yeah,
as
I saw
well.
that one little line. At least that's all I noticed. Was she's like, "Yeah, Hilde's written about me."
Yeah, and like it's the one person that she's using. She doesn't give a last name. She's using like some sort of pseudonym for. But I think that their friendship is like evolved in a way, and like and that's interesting because it does give a new a very particular perspective on that mentor mentee relationship and on like
Yeah,
a female relationship going over years, and that involves like both of them being ambitious writers that are successful to varying degrees, and like how they negotiate that I think is interesting. And like the fact that she stands up for herself and is like, no, you do make me feel bad at times by doing X, Y, or Z, which is all off screen. Like, and that's what makes me think that it's a real person too. Is a lot of that stuff is like it's not there, it's not written. It's just like, yeah, and then I sent her this message because she was so rude last night or like upset me in
yeah,
these ways. I think that with a lot of the other characters in here, that stuff gets written on the page and we see it directly. So I do think it's a person, but I think that they're coming to terms with each other. Like it would be super weird. I mean, it's super weird to think about being someone's teacher and then becoming their friend in that way, and like being
yeah,
in the same field and like having that relationship. So when she said like at some point in time, like I'm going to be a better writer than Hilda or Hildy, that's and how is she going to deal with that? Like that's a very real concern.
yeah. And I think, I mean, there's a bit. I don't think it's in this section. I think there's a earlier bit where she references like what essentially was a date, even though it wasn't a date, and there is that there is like almost romantic tension or something close to romantic tension between them, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's just interesting to see such a complicated relationship portrayed without. It's weird. I almost want to say without making it personal, which is insane considering how personal this book is. But she
Yeah.
does constantly she's constantly stepping back from herself
Yeah.
while being obsessed with herself. She is kind of trying to work through these relationships with people, which is
Yeah.
it's fascinating to see someone do that, and it's I guess it's healthy to see someone do that. Like there's something unhealthy about self-obsession, but the way it's done in this book feels actually probably healthy for her, like cathartic.
Yeah.
Um, also the way she's talking about her parents' divorce in this section.
I was going to
She's
ask about that.
yeah, she's angry at both of them, and she like whichever one she's with seems to be who she gets annoyed with, and then she's on the other one's side, which is fair.
Right.
Um, I don't know. I think the I'm struggling. Like, so there's raw honesty in this book, even though at the same time it's constantly it's crafted. This is immensely
Mm-hmm.
crafted. This clearly is not written in that
It's not a Tumblr blog.
right. It's not this stream of stuff sent out. It's clearly edited, constructed, crafted to be a portrayal of herself. But at the same time, it feels like a very sincere self, which I think is an interesting thing that autofiction can do. That you can actually work yourself into being more how you want to be,
Yeah.
which is what she's setting out to do, I
I,
think.
I think we said this at the very beginning, but like this is like the better version of Pessoa's live journaling. Like if the book is just quiet is basically like some emo kid writing the thoughts. This is like got that sort of emotion and like all the varying emotions related to it, but there's so much. There's such a craft to like how it's presented. Not to say that Pessoa is not good, but Pessoa is just
Right.
like that raw one of those after another after another after another after another, and this seems more self-conscious in a way and makes
Yeah,
it dilutes that a bit and makes it more impactful when it comes up.
I think that a goal of this book for her is to craft a specific human. I
Mm-hmm.
think she tells John that she wrote The Faster I Walk in order to be a human,
Yeah.
whereas I think she's writing it to be Kjersti. She's
Yeah.
writing it to go through all of these relationships and become the Kjersti that she can and want to be, and that can be this complicated, messy person that has all these relationships that have ups and downs.
Yeah.
That, and I think that you've talked about the book feeling. I don't think you called it plotless, but you've talked about like that. It's more events than plot. You know,
Yeah.
But I think there is. I think there is this arc of finding herself and finding how to be with people.
Right.
And I think that the chaotic order of events, I think, builds into that, and that the structuring of what appears to be a chaotic order of events.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. And there has been like the evolution of her consciousness and herself and her as a writer. Like I remember at the beginning, like there's moments where this suddenly steps up its game in terms of the writing.
Yes.
And that changes and that plays around. I think that all of that's very intentional and very much part of this arc. I think what I was thinking about was like how, like, what does plot mean? Like how we talk about plot when we talk about books, I think is different than how this is plotted. If that makes sense, or how this treats plot. Like the idea of like what makes a plot, you think of like a mystery novel, it has like XYZ, it goes up in the normal triangle, like ideas of like how plot works. This is not that. It's
Right.
doing something different than that. But yeah, I totally agree. I'm excited to go through these last 100 pages, man. We're almost done. We're almost done.
We are almost done, which I would love. My reading's been awful lately. I'm just in like 7 different books, and they're all massive. So I would love to finish something.
Yeah.
The last thing I finished was a very slim novel. That's another. She's not Quebecois. She's still French Canadian. France Dague, and looks like France Daigle. And so she has a trilogy, and I read the first one of the trilogy almost probably a year ago, and then just this month I read the second one. It's a very slim novel, and I was like, great, I finished something fantastic. I feel good. And then I went to look at the third book, and that's almost as thick as Duck's Newburyport.
Yep.
I'm like, what am I doing? I know. I that was how I first came to her. I was sitting in your office one day.
Yep.
I saw the foreshore, and I was like, holy shit.
I remember reading the copy of that and being like, this sounds awesome. But like, I don't know what I'm going to read it, but it sounds awesome.
Pick up the first 2, Foreshore and A Fine Passage. They're both super short. They're both really easy reads. They're both fantastic. Or no, I said it's just fine. It's just fine, A Fine Passage, and then Foreshore.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
And it's funny, just fine is a Quebec expression, passe-paille or something like that. And it was fun. It was like shortly after I'd read it, I was in Montreal on a trip, and my friends, when I hang out with them, they do a very good job of switching English to me for a lot of the time. But also there's huge chunks of a dinner where they're all talking in French, and I just sit there and pretend I can listen and pick up on author names or whatever. But hearing them like use the expression, I was like, holy shit! I caught an expression because of this book that is titled after the little expression.
That's so funny. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So I have a final question for you, but I guess like to wrap this up, we'll go through our favorite lines, which I have picked out. But next week we'll be going over pages 360 through 406, which brings us to the end of East of the River. And that's the penultimate episode. And it looks like we're going to have Kjersti on the final episode.
That's awesome.
So
awesome.
the next episode should have the translator Becky Crook on. We're just figuring out timing on this. And then Kjersti said that she would come on for the last one. We just have to figure out the timing on that too. If you're one of the people who watches this on YouTube, this is up a couple days early because I'm going to be away for the next week. So we're doing that penultimate episode on Thursday, which is the same day that the podcast will drop. So if you're a YouTube viewer, you're going to want to pay attention to our posts and see and Twitter and follow open_letter on Twitter to see like when things are happening. But if you just listen to the podcast, everything will be the same. Everything comes out on Thursday. It's all set. So my favorite quote from here is on 353. I'm going to say it before you steal it. I have to say that the autumn with this combination of self-absorption and writer's block has been brutal.
Oh man. So wait, you said that's on 353?
Yep, 353.
Yeah. Mine also. It starts on 352, but goes on to 353. Um, In order for the man to be ridiculous, he must be brought close. Everything ridiculous is close. Laughter annihilates anxiety, and the piety of an object of the world, it subjects man to intimate, uninhibited contact, and thus paves the way for a limitless exploration of the man. Laughter is one of the most significant factors in the formulation of that fearlessness without which anyone I'm going to start that sentence over. Laughter is one of the most significant factors in the formulation of that fearlessness without which any genuine notion of reality would be impossible.
Love it.
And I think that's a huge thing she's doing here. She's making a reality, and that's a very anxious and uncomfortable and death-focused reality. And the laughter that she has throughout it is how she's making it all bearable and more accurate.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So where can people, well, I'm going to ask you my question and then tell us where people can find you online. My question is, I know that you went on a tour of all Vermont bookstores over the past.
Well, no, I didn't quite hit all, because some antiquarian bookstores are only open a day or two a week, and I had to miss some of them.
Yeah. But of the bookstores you visited,
something.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
So out of those, which ones would you just like to give a shout out to?
I think that I'll give three, because there was one. So it was the third day of my trip was the best day of my trip by far, and it started with Everyone's Books in Brattleboro, which is an amazing store. It's a wicked old school woman hippie in tone and style when you walk in.
Nice.
They're very social justice oriented. And I'd gone on the trip being like, hey, I'm going to buy some random books. I'm also going to be seeking out some things. And one thing I wanted to seek out was I knew I was going to buy a Toni Morrison book because I haven't read her. I'm bad about reading Americans. She's someone I should read. She just died. And I was like, some store in this trip is going to be having a display for her, and that'll be the store that I want to get her book at. And I was like, I bet it's going to be everyone's, because she's the type of author they will back. They probably have always backed her, and now that she just passed, they're definitely going to be backing her.
Yeah.
So I went there, and right by the counter they had a bunch of her books. I was already having a great conversation with the bookseller who was working there, and I was like, hey, I've never read Toni Morrison. I want to. Where do you think I should start? And she had three that she felt really strong about, and we talked about them, and she ended up fully selling me on Song of Solomon.
Oh,
so
okay.
that's going to be the first Toni Morrison book I read, and that was how I started the day. And then I went to Newfane, which is a middle of nowhere, nothing town in Vermont, where I had to ask for directions to the bookstore because it's someone's house. It's a barn out in the back of someone's house.
Wow.
Hold on. So, yeah. And so I've been to that type of thing before. I've expected, okay, barn full of old, dusty, moldy, used books. It'll be fun. It's going to be messy and packed and jammed. It'll be cool. I walk in. It is a beautiful, perfect bookstore.
Wow.
It is astounding how pretty that store is. And all of the shelves are used books, good condition, good type, awesome stuff. And then all over the place, like on displays on top of the shelves and some other little areas, like, they have a center table, all new books. And not like, what are the 10 popular books right now? Just clearly this woman's, the owner's taste, or the whatever people buy books from her, their taste. It was some of it's stuff that just came out. It's also stuff like she had all three Helen DeWitt books. There is no bookstore in Vermont that carries all three Helen DeWitt books on a regular basis, even though Helen DeWitt is partially a Vermonter.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I literally almost wept in that store because it was the first time in I don't know how long that a bookstore has surprised me.
Nice.
And that's what I used to strive for in bookstores. Part it's just I'm old now, and part Vermont bookstores are, for the most part, mainstream.
Right.
That's just what it is. And that store's not. That store is incredible. And also, so the owner wasn't there. Her neighbor was covering for her.
That's kind of perfect.
It was kind of amazing. Wicked friendly woman. Just doesn't know a ton about books, but she's happy to help her neighbor out. And the owner had given her a copy of 84 Charing Cross Road as a present for watching over the store, which I thought was extremely sweet and very nice.
That's cool.
And so she told me this. I'm just gonna go on. She told me the story of the barn, which was that this guy used to record a radio show called Cheerio in like I think the 50s. That was to help cheer up invalids and shut-ins.
Wow.
Um, and then he ended up putting on plays in the barn, which is why the barn has a sort of weird setting. There's like a kind of a staging area.
Hmm.
And then he hung himself in the rafters of the barn.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Whoa.
so that store is just phenomenal. I didn't get to meet the owner because she was away, but because of this road trip, the Vermont Antiquarian Booksellers Association has invited me to their fall conference.
Oh my God.
So I'm going to that, and I'm going to get to meet all the people I didn't meet, and just it's going to be fun. And then I left from there, and I drove over a mountain road that is closed for half of the year. It has a sign that says no road maintenance November 1st through April 1st. And I really want to get a shirt that has like a road sign on it that just says no self maintenance November 1st through April 1st. Because that is how you live in Vermont. You just fuck it when
You should
when
just
therapy
make
comes.
that and sell it on TeePublic.
I know, I need to. And just a beautiful drive. And then I went to Putney to go to Antidote Books, which I emailed you guys about
Yep.
because I've been wanting to go to them for a while. They are they do interesting stuff. They have cool poets that I haven't heard of. They do like cocktail readings. They've always from distance they seem like they're doing really cool stuff. They had an event with a deep vellum translator.
Oh,
Like
wow.
that doesn't exist in Vermont.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. So I was extremely excited to go there, and it was awesome. It's owned by a young couple from Texas. The woman co-owner, she's a poet, and so she uses a lot of her connections to get really interesting people there when they're happen to be on the East Coast or whatever. And they're developing a connection with the translation program at UMass Amherst because they care about translation. And so I had a blast talking with them. They were literally ordering books for the store while we were talking for that I was suggesting.
Nice.
They're poetry focused, but they want to expand, I think. And then they also sell used books. And I picked up a Rudolf Wurlitzer book
Oh, cool.
because he's fun, and I've only read one of his, and I want to read more, and I love $2 Radio, so
Yeah.
that was that stop. Yeah, that day. Oh, and since they knew I was camping that night, they gave me cold brew coffee for the morning, and then
Nice.
yeah, and it was great because I was camping further south of them, and I had to drive back north, so I dropped off the empty mason jar on their doorstep in the morning while they were closed, and then continued on my way. Um,
Nice.
yeah, I mean, that store is amazing. I really want to try to do some stuff with them because they have interest in doing more events, having more cool people in, and maybe having sort of a northern presence in Burlington because it's that type of interesting bookstore is needed here.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool, man. So where can people
Yeah.
find you online if they want to follow and see all your book recommendations and Quebecois information and all the stores that you're going to?
On Twitter, I'm ptsmith underscore VT. And then on Instagram, which is where I did all of the photos of these bookstores, me and my dog. That's Green Mountain Rambler, and there's underscores somewhere in there. I forget where. I think it's Green Mountain underscore Rambler. I don't know. I'm not using it tons. It's mostly hikes with him, and then all the bookstore stuff that I did.
Very cool. Well, thank you for joining and for coming on here. And
Yeah,
for
thanks
anyone
for
who's still
having me.
listening, next episode, we're going up to page 406. We're 2 episodes away from the end, and then we move on to Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellman, which you should get a copy of now because it's going to be a 2-month review, but it'll still be a lot of pages a day. If you want to get, or a lot of pages a week. So if you want to get a jump on it, you might want to get it now. Until next time, take care, everyone.